Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Janmadhyasya yatona
Janmadhyasya yatunvayaditaratas
Prate Sabhignasarat Tene Brahmadaya Kavaye Muyanti Yatsuraya Tejo Varimidam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Trisargo Mrisha Damna Svedana Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi. O my Lord, Sri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, O all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Sri Krishna because he is absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes. Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he who first imparted the Vedic knowledge onto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen in fire, or land seen on water. Only because of him do the material universes, temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature, appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord of the three modes of nature. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Sri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is absolute truth. Dharma projita kaitavot. Dharma projita kaitavotra paramo nirmatsaranam satam. Vedyan vastavanatra vastu shivadam tapatrayan mulana. Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kimva Parishvara Satyari Bhagavate Shishusistashana. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated. As Bhagavad Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of the Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. Nikamakalpataror galitam phalam sukhamukharam nitadrava samyutam vibhata bhagatam nasamhalayam mohorahora sikabhuvivahuga. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desired tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Nimisashetri Rasaya Sonakadaya Shatram Sargaya Lokaya Sahasra Samamasrata. Once in a holy place in the forest of Naimisharanya, great sages headed by the sage Shaunaka assembled to perform a great 1,000-year sacrifice for the satisfaction of the Lord and his devotees. Tad ikadatu munaya pratarhuta hutagnaya satkritam sutamashinam paprachuridamadarat. One day, after finishing their morning duties by burning a sacrificial fire and offering a seat of esteem to Srila Sutta Goswami, the great sages made inquiries with great respect about the following matters. Vishaya Uju Taya Puranami Setashani Janagaha Yatani Apiyaditani Dharmashastrani Yani Uta. The sages said, Respected Sutta Goswami, you are completely free from all vice. You are well versed in the scriptures famous for religious life, and in the Puranas and the histories as well, for you have gone through them under proper guidance and have also explained them. Yani Veda Vidam Shrestho Bhagavan Badarayanaha Anyacha Munya Sutta Ravara Viduhu. Being the eldest learned Vedantist, O Sutta Goswami, you are acquainted with the knowledge of Vyasadeva, who is the incarnation of Godhead, and you also know other sages who are fully versed in all kinds of physical and metaphysical knowledge. And Vetatvam Somya Tat Sarvam Tatvatastad Anugrahat Bruyusnigdasya Sishyasya Gura Vogoyamapiyutta. And because you are submissive, the spiritual masters have endowed you with all the favors bestowed upon a gentle disciple. Therefore, you can tell us that you have scientifically learned from them. Tatra tatrana just yusman bhavatayad vinishchitam pumsamekanta shreyas tanna samsitumarvasi. Please, therefore, being blessed with many years, explain to us in an easily understandable way what you have ascertained to be the absolute and ultimate good for the people in general. Marayan Pala Yusa Sabya Kala Vasmin Yuge Jana Manda Sumanda Mateo Manda Bhagya Hyopadrutaha. Learned one, in this iron age of Kali, men always have but short lives. They are quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed.
Thank you, Sridham. What happened to Sachi? We lost her for a while. She's there still.
She's listening.
Oh, okay. I thought she was going to do Sanskrit and you were going to do English.
She doesn't know how to do the Sanskrit.
Oh, okay. But I heard her in the beginning. She did well. You did well, Sachi.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. And I think your mother also gave some help. So thank you, Vrindavika, Ramaya, Mataji.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. So welcome, dear devotees, to today's chat plus session. My name is Vrindavan Chandra Das. I see some new names, so maybe we haven't met before during the chat Bhagavad Gita. So welcome to the group if you're joining us for the first time. And also welcome if you're joining us for the first time. So we'll continue with our discussion of the first verse of the first chapter of the first canto, chapter entitled Questioned by the Sages. And we've been discussing the purport of the first verse. And today we shall conclude the last 3 paragraphs of the purport. But before we do so, we always recite the Mangala Charan and prayers, so you can please also join in. These prayers invoke auspiciousness. We are embarking on a study and discussion of the greatest of all the Shastras. And with our tiny capacities, it's almost impossible for us to understand the greatest of all literatures. So we offer our prayers to our previous acharyas, the Lord and the Lord's close associates, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also, to give us, empower us, to bless us, to bring auspiciousness to our gathering. Om Jnanatirmirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmalitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yatha Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaisnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahadana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitam Scha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Satidevi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpa Turyascha Kripa Sindhu Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivashadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namne Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Astacha Deshatharine Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So this verse number 1. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadhyasyan Yaton Vayad Itarataschateshu Abhigya Swarat Tene Brahmaridaya Dikavaye Moyanti Yatsuraya Tejo Varimridam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Trisargom Risha Damna Svena Sadani Rasta Kuhukam Satyam Padam Nimahi. So this verse is an amazing verse. It is said that this verse, it captures the entire essence of Vedanta. Practically speaking, it's not possible to pack into one verse more than what Srila Vyasadeva has done in this verse. Those who are great scholars, who have studied Vedanta, who understand Sanskrit, who understand the Sanskrit meters, they have all concluded that this verse, it contains the essence. It packs into a single verse more than can possibly be packed in. And many of our great acharyas have commented on this verse. Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he spoke for 3 months continuously every day for a few hours just explaining this one verse. And it is considered to be so important so essential? Because it provides what is the definition of the absolute truth. And sometimes it's also called Krishna Sambandha. So in spiritual knowledge, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has taught that there are three essential aspects. It's Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojan. Sambandha means relationship. Abhideya means the process. And Prayojan means the goal. So this verse, it explains the topic of Krishna Sambandha. And if we study the Bhagavatam, we'll see later on that Vedavyas or Srila Vyasadeva, he has been chastised by his guru Narad Muni for not making the meaning and the essence of Vedic literature clear in his previous writings. So Vedavyas, Srila Vyasadeva, did not want to repeat that mistake. So right at the very beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam, he, without any doubt, explains that who the Srimad Bhagavatam is all about. It is about Krishna. And in this verse, he establishes Krishna as the absolute truth. Now, in the previous days, I think it was starting on Tuesday, in all of our very learned facilitators, they've been taking us through the verse and also the purport, Srila Prabhupada's purport. So today, we will attempt to conclude the reading of the purport and this discussion on this particular matter. So let us do that. I will now share my screen. All right, so we will read the last three paragraphs and then we will discuss. Would anyone like to volunteer to read paragraph 11 of Srila Prabhupada's purport?
I can read.
Please do. Prabhu.
Some Mayavadi scholars argue that Srimad Bhagavatam was not compiled by Sri Vyasadeva. And some of them suggest that this book is a modern creation written by someone named Vopadeva. In order to refute such meaningless arguments, Sri Sridhar Swami points out that there is reference to the Bhagavatam in many of the oldest Puranas. This first shloka of the Bhagavatam begins with the Gayatri Mantra. There is reference to this in the Matsya Purana, which is the oldest Purana. In that Purana, it is said, with reference to the Gayatri Mantra in the Bhagavatam, that there are many narrations of spiritual instructions, beginning with the Gayatri Mantra. And there is the history of Vritrasura. Anyone who makes a gift of this great work on a full moon day attains to the highest perfection of life by returning to Godhead. There is reference to the Bhagavatam in the other Puranas also, where it is clearly stated that this work was finished in 12 cantos, which include 18,000 shlokas. In the Padma Purana also, there is reference to the Bhagavatam in a conversation between Gautam and Maharaj Amrish. The king was advised therein to read regularly Srimad Bhagavatam if he desired liberation from material bondage. Under the circumstances, there is no doubt about the authority of the Bhagavatam. Within the past 500 years, many erudite scholars and acharyas like Jiva Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, Vishwanath Chakravarti Vishwanath Chakravarti, Vallabhacharya, and many other distinguished scholars, even after the time of Lord Chaitanya, made elaborate commentaries on the Bhagavatam. And the serious student would do well to attempt to go through them to better relish the transcendental messages.
Thank you, Prabhu. So, Srila Prabhupada in this verse is explaining a bit about the authenticity of the Bhagavatam. The Mayavadi scholars, being Mayavadi, Aparadi, were offenders to the personality of Godhead. For them, the meaning of Srimad Bhagavatam will always evade them. Actually, there are some Mayavadi scholars, they would not even attempt to read Srimad Bhagavatam. Because Bhagavatam is just nothing but descriptions about the personality of Godhead. Wherever we read, there is Krishna. Srila Prabhupada used to say there's not a single word in the Bhagavatam that is not about Krishna. So for the Mayavadis, because they cannot understand Bhagavatam, in some way they also try to discredit the Bhagavatam as being an authentic Vedic scripture. Authentic Vedic scripture means compiled by Srila Vyasadeva. All of the Vedas is compiled by Srila Vyasadeva. He's the topmost Vedantic writer. He's also the literal incarnation of the God, of the Supreme Personality of God, it's Sri Krishna. So in order to discredit the Bhagavatam, they say that Bhagavatam was not written by Srila Vyasadeva, that it was written by someone named Vopadev. But Srila Sridhar Swami is accepted by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as the greatest authority, the greatest commentator on the Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Rupa Goswami, also following in the footsteps of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, has declared that Sridhar Swami's commentary on the Bhagavatam is greatest. So I'm not sure if we've been discussing in previous classes, but Prabhupada makes very clear the last two lines. The Bhagavatam actually comes alive by the commentary of the Vaishnavas, Acharyas. The Bhagavatam is a very unique literature compiled by Srila Vyasadeva. And actually, there are so many words in the Bhagavatam that one cannot find in any other book. So normally, if there is a word that we have not heard previously, we would go to the dictionary. In the Sanskrit language, there is also a Sanskrit dictionary, the William Monier Dictionary. But what would you do if there's words that have never appeared before? How would we know the meaning? And actually, if you can go to the Sanskrit dictionary, you'll find the meaning of words that were used for the very, very first time in Srimad Bhagavatam. So that would raise the question then. How has the person who is compiling the dictionary, how have they come to find out the meaning of a word that was never seen or heard of before? Which is a very valid question. And does anyone have an inclination of what is the answer to the question? How will the compiler of a dictionary, the Sanskrit William Monnier Sanskrit dictionary, know the meaning of certain words in the Bhagavatam, which appear for the first time in any literature, Sanskrit words? How would they know? Actually, anyone likes to say? Okay, I shall tell you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Will the scriptures reveal themselves, as they say, like Krishna reveals himself? Does it happen to them if they are so much engrossed in the Bhagavatam that they get the intelligence to?
Yes, you've answered the question, Mataji. These words I only understood and explained by the great Vaishnavacharyas. So at the bottom of this purport, Srila Prabhupada says, great acharyas like Jiva Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, Vishwanath Chakravarti, Vallabhacharya, and many other distinguished scholars, even after the time of Lord Chaitanya, made elaborate commentaries on the Bhagavatam. So these acharyas who are very advanced, Krishna reveals the meaning of each word to them, the essential meaning. There can be multiple meanings. What we are concerned about is the essential meanings. So these acharyas, they have written commentaries on the Bhagavatam, and they have revealed in their commentaries the essential meanings of each verse. And later on, I'll discuss a little more, and you can see this probably more visibly when we discuss the next paragraph. So these Vaishnavacharyas, they've explained the meaning. And only when one enters into the commentaries of these Vaishnavacharyas, when one gets the real meaning of Bhagavatam. And Prabhupada says, and the serious student would do well to attempt to go through them to better relish the transcendental messages. So in one sense, we consider ourselves, yes, we are serious students, but we are beginners. So we certainly would like to hear the commentaries of all of these great acharyas. And there are devotees that are speaking about these commentaries. But maybe we will, as we mature in our understanding of the Bhagavatam, as we become more serious students, then we can delve into the commentaries. And they are simply amazing. And I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about shortly. So anyway, coming back to the point about the Mayavadis, who try to say that the Bhagavatam is not compiled by Vyasadeva. Srila Prabhupada, quoting Sridhar Swami, quoting various Puranas, the Matsya Purana, and so on, they categorically evidence that Bhagavatam has and was compiled by Srila Vyasadeva. Because of these older Puranas, were not disputed, they were compiled by Vyasadeva. These older Puranas quote the Bhagavatam. And one example is given here, and he said from the, in the Matsya Purana, it is explained that the Bhagavatam compiled by Srila Vyasadeva, it starts with the Gayatri Mantra. So who can see the Gayatri Mantra in the first verse? Where is the Gayatri Mantra? Anyone would like to say?
Dhimahi, Prabhuji.
Yes, Satyam Param Dhimahi. Let me go down. So this is the definition of the absolute truth. And the previous speakers have been speaking, I understand, on each of these different aspects, defining the absolute truth. So this word Satyam Param Dhimahi, I meditate on that absolute truth. And we know that this line, Satyam Param Dhimahi, it is an integral part of the Gayatri Mantra. So our acharyas, Srila Sridhar Swami, he has specifically quoted the Matsya Purana. And then the second evidence is the history of Vritrasura. And we all know that Vritrasura, the pastime of Vritrasura, is also compiled in the Bhagavatam. And the history of Vritrasura, it features also in the original Vedas. And the original Vedas was compiled by Vedavyas. So in this way, our acharyas, Srila Jiva Goswami has also written a beautiful book called Tattva Sandarbha, where he systematically, point by point, references why Srimad Bhagavatam is the greatest of all Shastras. And then maybe one day, while we continue with our study of the Bhagavatam, we can go through just the main sequence of arguments that Srila Jiva Goswami takes us through in his Tattva Sandarbha to explain why Srimad Bhagavatam is the topmost of all scriptures compiled by Vyasadeva himself. And the third evidence here is also, it says here, anyone who makes a gift of this great work on a full moon night attains the highest perfection of life, returning to Godhead. And we know also in the Bhagavatam, the 12th canto, 13th chapter, 13th verse, I think it is, where this is stated very clearly. And then there's further evidence in the Padma Purana. There's a reference between Gautama Rishi and Maharaja Ambrish. So Prabhupada is, some of us, we may have doubts, have not been enough familiar with the Srimad Bhagavatam, on the authenticity, on the place that Bhagavatam occupies in the Vedic canon. It's unparalleled. So Prabhupada is giving us some brief, but very clear, concise, compelling arguments to refute anyone who may allude to the Bhagavatam not being compiled by Vyasadeva. Any questions and comments on that before we go on to the next paragraph of the purport? Okay, everyone's good. So we'll move on to the next paragraph, which is a really interesting paragraph. Would anyone like to volunteer to read this?
Can I?
Yes, Vishangi Mata, so please do.
Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur specifically deals with the original and pure sex psychology, Adiras, devoid of all mundane inebriety. The whole material creation is moving under the principle of sex life. In modern civilization, sex life is the focal point for all activities. Whenever one turns his face, he sees sex life predominant. Therefore, sex life is not unreal. Its reality is experienced in the spiritual world. The material sex life is but a perverted reflection of the original fact. The original fact is the absolute truth, and thus the absolute truth cannot be impersonal. It is not possible to be impersonal and contain pure sex life. Consequently, the impersonalist philosophers have given indirect impetus to the abominable mundane sex life because they have overstressed the impersonality of this ultimate truth. Consequently, Man without information of the actual spiritual form of sex life has accepted perverted material sex life as the all in all. There is a distinction between sex life in the diseased material condition and spiritual sex life. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. So there is two words that's repeated a few times in this paragraph, and that is sex life. So one may think, where is this coming from? Why is Srila Prabhupada bringing this particular subject matter into this purport, in this verse? There's two important reasons why Srila Prabhupada is doing that. The first reason relates to the 7th line of this particular verse. And I'll just quickly again take you to the 7th line. So the 7th line is Dhamna Svena Sada Nirasta Kuhukam, eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from illusion. So Prabhupada is expanding on this point, that whatever we see in this material world has its original counterpart in the spiritual world. The only difference is that in the material world, we experience it as a perverted reflection. So Prabhupada is using probably, the one aspect of material life that features most prominently in the consciousness of most conditioned souls. And Prabhupada is using this particular aspect to emphasize this point, that everything that we experience in the material world has its original counterpart, even sex life, but it is of a completely different nature. What we experience in the material world is something that we do not want to talk about, something that's considered by the great saintly persons to be abominable, to be not looked upon very favorably. But in the spiritual world, we also have the same experience. Now that is the first aspect of why Srila Prabhupada mentions it. But the second aspect is the aspect of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Prabhupada says Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur specifically deals with the original and pure sex psychology, adiras, devoid of all mundane inebriety. So Srila Prabhupada is here now giving us a glimpse, and we don't have to labor the point, but I just want to make the point so some of us can put it into context. It just doesn't sit there as something that like hits us left flank. So what Prabhupada is referring to here is the commentary by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is one of the great Vaishnavacharyas. He is given a very brilliant, he has given brilliant explanations of this first verse. And he said that this first verse, it highlights 5 unique themes. And what are those 5 unique themes? One is that the absolute is transcendental. That is a definition of the absolute truth. Transcendental meaning someone who is beyond the material. Secondly, this verse declares Krishna's form. And this is the essence of Bhagavatam. Bhagavan, who's got form, who's got personality. Then he explains that this verse is talking about the greatest and the highest of all rasas, which is Madhurya Ras, conjugal ras. Then the 5th theme is Radha and Krishna together. Sorry, the 4th theme. And the fifth theme is Bhakti Yoga. Now, devotees, don't get confused about this. It's just something we have to be conscious about. The point being that the Vaishnavacharyas, in every word, they can see deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper meaning. So I've put a little table up here, just not for your serious. I mean, you can want, if you want to study it seriously, but Srila Vaishnava Chakravarti has explained every line of this particular verse in terms of these 5 themes. The absolute is transcendental. It describes Krishna's form. It describes conjugal ras. It describes Radha and Krishna together. And it describes Bhakti Yoga. So this is for the advanced students. How we can see that this verse is simply explaining Radha and Krishna together. And, he actually gives an explanation how Radha and Krishna can be seen in this verse. So I won't, because of the benefit of time, I won't go into it. I just wanted to make the point of what is being discussed here, so you can have an idea. And then we'll go to the last paragraph, which I will read and just give a very brief understanding or explanation on. This Srimad Bhagavatam will gradually elevate the unbiased reader to the highest perfectional stage of transcendence. It will enable him to transcend the 3 modes of material activities, fruitive actions, speculative philosophy, and worship of functional deities as inculcated in Vedic verses. Very, very interesting statement made by Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada is saying that Srimad Bhagavatam will help specifically the unbiased reader. Unbiased reader meaning is not contaminated by any other speculative interpretations. We're simply, in an unbiased way, accepting Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, approaches this literature. And anyone who does so will achieve the highest perfectional stage of transcendence. It will enable one to transcend the material modes of nature. It will enable one to transcend the reactions of our previous karma. It will enable us to transcend any misconceptions that we may have from previously worshipping other deities. And it will enable us to transcend anything that Srila Vyasadeva has written in any other Vedic literature that may give us another understanding, an inaccurate, a non-essential understanding of what the ultimate goal of the Vedas is. So it is a beautiful verse, beautiful purport, packed with so much of meaning, For many of us, when we've been studying this verse and going through the purport, some of us may even feel that it's above us. We should never think like that. We should never think, Yasya deve parabhakti yata deve tata guru tasyaiti iti katita prakashante mahatmanaha. To those who have implicit faith in the spiritual master and the Lord, all of the imports of the Vedic literature will be revealed. Meaning, if we simply stick to the serious study, the submissive hearing discussion of Srimad Bhagavatam, the essential meaning of this first verse will be revealed to us. Certainly it will be revealed to us. So I'll stop here, see if anyone's got any comments, questions, or reflections, and then we'll go on to tonight's bhajan. Hare Krishna. Any questions or comments? So let me just see. There is a question here. by Santosh Mataji. Could you please explain what is meant by the term functional deities, please? Thank you. My understanding of functional deities means the different deities, the demigods, they've been ascribed different functional positions in the material world, where the Vedic literatures, if one studies, one may mistakenly think that some of these deities are the Supreme Lord. For example, I think it is the Rig Veda. It's written in such a way that one may mistakenly think that Indra, he is the Supreme. But that is not so. That is not so. There's another question here.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Pranam to you.
Pranam
Yes.
to Puja Mataji. Nice to hear from you again.
I didn't understand the unbiased reader because somebody was at the door, so I had to go out at that time. Can you explain?
Oh, unbiased.
Yes.
Basically, unbiased means you coming with no baggage.
Okay.
Baggage in the sense of having some preconceptions about who Krishna is, having some preconceptions about what Srimad Bhagavatam is, keeping an open mind to what is written by Srila Vyasadeva. Meaning, whatever you've been taught in the past by even Vyasadeva himself, in some of the other Vedic literatures, you leave that behind. Whatever you may have learned by some other gurus, non-Vaishnava gurus, you leave that behind. So that you come with a completely open mind. You approach Bhagavatam with an open mind, with a submissive mind, hearing it from Vyasadeva himself. And as Prabhupada says, Bhagavatam has to be heard from the person Bhagavat, the pure devotee of Krishna. That's what it means.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna. Hare Krishna. Emma Mataji writes, Hare Krishna Prabhuji, is there any point that the acharyas have interpreted a word differently? In which case, what would be the concluding interpretation? Yes, Emma Mataji, they have. They have. Many of the Vaishnava acharyas, they've also given a different or multiple explanations of a particular verse or a particular stanza. So that raises your question then. In which case, what would be the concluding interpretation? In our case, we conclude that all of the interpretations are correct. The only difficulty is we are not so advanced to reconcile all of them. But as we make advancement, we shall be able to reconcile them. Also, maybe not reconcile them in the very literal sense, but we can understand that each of the acharyas, they are situated in a different rasa with Krishna. And they see a particular verse with a particular type of flavor. And that different people with different rasas, at some point in time, they will resonate with that particular rasa or that particular commentary by an acharya. That's how we see it. We do not see that there's conflicts between the interpretation, but we see they will be reconciled. So we can relish all those rasas. Yes, certainly. Why not? Why not? Hope that makes sense to you, Emma Mataji.
Yes, thank you, Prabhuji. It makes a lot of sense because then we can absorb the different perspectives of the different acharyas. But then there is not one authority that we can rely on, is there? We can appreciate all of them.
Yes, we can appreciate all of them.
Yeah,
You can
yeah.
push it on.
Wonderful. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay, okay, Santosh Mataji has written there. Okay, all right, let's see if there's anyone. Shakshi, please can you expand on the Gayatri Mantra which is explained in the first verse? Well, the Gayatri Mantra is it is made of many syllables and many words. But there are certain aspects of that Gayatri Mantra which are formed to be like seed aspects, mula, seed aspects of the mantra. And one mula or seed aspect of the Gayatri Mantra is that I meditate on that absolute truth. And those of us who have been given Gayatri Mantra, there are 5 stanzas to the Gayatri Mantra. You'll see that these phrases, I meditate on that absolute truth, features there. So we can see that featuring in this verse, Satyam Param Dhimahi. That's how it's deemed. The Gayatri Mantra is deemed. The mula, the root part of the Gayatri Mantra is in this verse. So hope that answers your question, Sakshi Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Nila Vasana Madhavi Mataji, we're also very happy you could join our Bhagavatam class. Okay, are there no more questions, comments, or reflections? Tomorrow we'll move on to the second verse, which is also a beautiful, beautiful, power-packed, amazing verse. And we shall move on to that. Okay, there's one thing Jai Shri Mataji has written. We have someone joining for the first time. Nagaraj Prabhu and his family visited the manor for the first time today. I showed them around and spoke to them, and they were interested in joining the chat group. Hare Krishna, Nagaraj Prabhu and your family. Thank you for joining us today. It's nice to have you with us. Okay. So I'm sorry if I missed anyone. I'm not so good with this chat. So I hope I've got everyone's questions and comments. I think I have. All right. I think that can now take us to just bear with me while I bring up the song. And then, all right, let me share. So tomorrow we know is on the Vaishnav calendar, a very, very auspicious day. It's the appearance day of Sri Nityananda Prabhu. And we are all made up of the mercy of Sri Nityananda Prabhu. Without the mercy of Sri Nityananda Prabhu, we cannot get the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Without the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we will not get the mercy of Srimati Radharani. Without the mercy of Srimati Radharani, we will not get the mercy of Lord Krishna. So the mercy of Lord Nityananda is foremost. So one of our great acharyas, Narottam Das Thakur, has written a beautiful compilation of songs called Pratana. And one very famous and beloved song is called Nitai Pada Kamalam. So today this will be sung by Mamta Mataji. And the translation of the song will be read to us by Meenakshi Madhavi Mataji. So I think you're going to read the translation first, Mataji. Oh, this one doesn't have the translation. Why is that? This is the purport by Srila Prabhupada. Have you got the translation, Mataji?
I don't have the translation. I'm just thinking in. It'll be in KK. Hare Krishna Prabhuji. It is there in the KK songs.
Is it?
If you can. Yes, Prabhuji.
I'm in KK songs at the moment. This is a synonym of that.
Nitya Pada Kamala. It is. Otherwise, we can go to Vaishnava songs list.
I got it now. So you can read it. Yeah.
Okay, Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Translation for the Nitya Pada Kamala. Sentence, first sentence, first paragraph. The lotus feet of Lord Nityananda are a shelter where one will get the soothing moonlight, not only of one, but of millions of moons. If the world wants to have real peace, it should take shelter of Lord Nityananda. Unless one takes shelter under the shade of the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda, it will be very difficult for him to approach Radha Krishna. If one actually wants to enter into the dancing party of Radha Krishna, he must firmly catch hold of the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda. Number 2, anyone who has not established his relationship with Nityananda Prabhu is understood to have spoiled his valuable human birth. Such a human being is actually an uncontrollable animal because he never uttered the holy names of Nityananda. He has become merged into so-called material happiness, which what can his useless education and family tradition do to help him? Number 3, being maddened after false prestige and identification with the body, one is thinking, oh, what is Nityananda? What can he do for me? I don't care. The result is that he is accepting something false to be truth. If you actually want to approach the association of Radha Krishna, you must first achieve the mercy of Lord Nityananda. When he is merciful towards you, then you will be able to approach Radha Krishna. Therefore, you should firmly grasp the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda. Number 4, the lotus feet of Nityananda are not illusion. They are a fact. One who engages in the transcendental loving service of Nityananda is also transcendental. Always try to catch the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda. This Narottam Das is very unhappy because I am praying to Lord Nityananda to make me happy. My dear Lord, please keep me close to your lotus feet. Hare Krishna.
Krishna. Thank you for the beautiful, heartfelt reading, Mataji. I could feel your affection there for Lord Nityananda. Thank you. Before I forget, I want to make one announcement before we sing the song. Tomorrow we all have an opportunity to do some service for Lord Nityananda. It's half a day fasting at 12:30 tomorrow. The devotees will be enjoying a feast in honor of Lord Nityananda, served at Bhaktivedanta manner. Divyanam Prabhu is engaged in coordinating the serve out, and he's looking for devotees to help serve Lord Nityananda's feast at 12:30 tomorrow. So please, devotees, if you are available, don't miss this opportunity to serve Lord Nityananda by serving his devotees, by serving his feast on this most auspicious of all days. So please contact Divyanam Prabhu. I will share his number after Mamta Mataji sings the song today. And if you have any questions, you can ask. Hare Krishna. So Mamta Mataji, over to you.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Hare Krishna everyone. Thank you. Nitai pada kamala koti chandra sushitala. Nitai pada kamala koti chandra sushitala. Je chhaye jagat jura. Je chhaye jagat jura. Heno nitai bine bhai Radha Krishna paite nai. Heno nite bine bhai Radha Krishna paito nai. Trudha kori dhoro nitar pai. Druda kori dhoro nitar pai. Se sambandha nahi jar বৃথা জন্ম গেল তার সে সম্বন্ধ নাহি যার বৃথা জন্ম গেল তার সে পশু বড় দুরাচার সে পশু বড় দুরাচার নিতাই না বলিল মুখে মজিল সংসার সুখে নিতাই না বলিল মুখে মজিল সংসার সুখে বিদ্যাকুলে কি করিবে তার বিদ্যাকুলে কি করিবে তার অহংকারে মত্ত হইয়া নিতাই পাদ পাশরিয়া অহংকারে মত্ত হইয়া নিতাই পদ পাশরিয়া অসত্যরে সত্য করি মানি অসত্যরে সত্য করি মানি নিতাইয়ের করুণা হবে ব্রজে রাধা কৃষ্ণ পাবে নিতাইয়ের করুণা হবে ব্রজে রাধা কৃষ্ণ পাবে ধরো নিতাই চরণ দুখানি ধরো নিতাই চরণ দুখানি নিতাইয়ে চরণ সত তাহার সেবক নিত্য নিতাইয়ের চরণ সত তাহার সেবক নিত্য নিতাই পদ সদা করয়াস নিতাই পদ সদা করয়াস নরোত্তমা বড় দুঃখী নিতাই মোরে কর সুখী নরোত্তম বড় দুঃখী নিতাই মোরে কর সুখী রাখো রঙ্গ চরণের পাশ রাখো রঙ্গ চরণের পাশ জয় নিত্যানন্দ রাম জয় নিত্যানন্দ রাম নিত্যানন্দ নাম জয় নিত্যানন্দ রাম জয় নিত্যানন্দ রাম জয় নিত্যানন্দ রাম নিত্যানন্দ নাম জয় নিত্যানন্দ রাম নিতাই গৌরা হরি বল হরি বল হরি বল নিতাই গৌরা হরি বল নিতাই গৌরা হরি বল হরি বল হরি বল নিতাই গৌরা হরি বল श्री नित्यानंद की जय श्री चैतन्य महाप्रभु जी की जय श्री राधा कृष्ण जी की जय श्री प्रभुपाद की जय thank you Prabhu ji thank you so much
That's beautiful, Mataji. Well sung.
Thank you Prabhu ji
Such a beautiful bhajan. So thank you, dear devotees. I will, as I mentioned, I will share my screen with Vietnam Prabhu's number. You can please make contact with the Vietnam Prabhu, and if you like to do some service tomorrow, there's the opportunity. 07527 424 88815, and it's also be in our group. So it's exciting. Let's observe Lord Nityananda Trayodashi tomorrow, begging for the mercy of Lord Nityananda. I've just been listening to lectures about Lord Nityananda, and Lord Nityananda, he will accept anybody and everybody, no matter what sin we have done, no matter what horrible thoughts we have, no matter what offenses we've committed. If we simply surrender to his lotus feet, wanting to take shelter of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Lord Nityananda will give us his mercy. So, Vanchakalpa Turabhyascha, Kripa Sindhubhya,
Patitanam Vaishnavebho Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada ki
Ki Jai.
Jai.
Bhaktivinoda ki.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you,
Thank
Prabhuji.
you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna,
Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna.
Hare
Thank you.
Krishna.